if you're thinking this must be a dumb question, it's not a dumb question. It's actually a more complicated question. So somebody who wants to come into your practice for women health issues doesn't want to know about Canva, and they do not want to know about your account. What are those services that you can bring in that maybe insurance doesn't even reimburse for and that the person has to pay cash for it, right? Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. This is your one-stop shop to learn the business side of your practice on a deeper level. On this show, we empower you to own your CEO status to scale your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit. Listen in as we talk about how to market your practice to gain more visibility, hire, build, and engage your ride or die dream team, create streamlined operations, and make financial decisions as a CEO. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Let's get started. Hello. Welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I am super excited about today because we're talking all about dumb questions. Now, as a CEO coach with tons of practice experience, tons of healthcare experience, almost 2 decades worth, I know one thing to be true. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Now, I'm going to tell a story because I want to put this in just kind of perspective. When I was in my freshman year of high school, I'm trying to remember, but my freshman year of high school, I was in English class. And so my English teacher, I was in college prep classes. My English teacher had what was called a dummy stick. And she would it was like a paint roller without the roller, so just like the paint sponge. And she would take it, if you asked a question, she thought if your question was dumb, she would take it and throw it at you, saying, "That's a dumb question, here's the dummy stick." And I remember I went home and told my mom, my English teacher is throwing things, talking about dumb questions and and then with this dummy stick. And so right away, my mother being who she is, the wonderful woman that she is, went straight away to the principal's office and was like, "Listen, this lady is throwing things in class and there is no such thing as a dumb question." So fast forward to years later, and even what I've told my own boys, there's no such thing as a dumb question. A lot of times we think it's a dumb question because we think that we should know it or that maybe we should have learned it. And so I get this a lot. So today we're going to talk about what you think, quote unquote, with air quotes, of dumb questions. Let's get started. One of the main things I want to say is there's 2 camps when it comes to practices. There is the, hey, we're all cash pay, self-pay, screw the healthcare system. And then there is the, well, we're going to take insurance because that's what our region needs. That's what our people need. That's what our community needs. And that's where I'm in alignment. And so I want to say one thing. When it comes down to business, your mission, your vision is your perspective. But one of the questions I do get is because we're in healthcare, we have to be so service-oriented. We have to be heart-centered. We cannot be rich. We cannot make more money. And I want to give you permission with this episode that you deserve to have a practice that pays you well. You deserve to have money, the amount of money that you want to make. You deserve to have the lifestyle that you want to live. So that is different for everybody. Yesterday, I got a really great question from a client. She was like, "Well, Brandy, I'm trying to figure out what my revenue goal is." And so she was listening to some other people's revenue goals. And she's like, "I feel like my revenue goal should be higher." And the number one question I asked her is why do you think that it should be higher? Is it because you are being pressured into thinking that your revenue goal should be higher? Or are you trying to give yourself a raise? Are you trying to pay your team more money? Are you trying to maybe move into a new building? Are you trying to bring more revenue in the door because for me, I have a kid in college, so what is it that is driving you to feel that you need to make more money? And you answer that question for yourself. It's so easy to look at what other people are doing and get caught up in that. In that comparison syndrome. And so I do want to give you some grace as we're diving into the first topic of dumb questions, money. So to go back to my original point with the 2 camps, one of the main questions I get is okay, I'm taking healthcare insurance and I want to stop. I'm tired of the shenanigans that, payers do. I'm tired of Blue Cross Blue Shield, trying to say when I can get paid, United Healthcare, everything that happened with changed healthcare and just the hack. So many people are looking for other ways to bring in revenue into the practice. The other thing is a lot of practices, and I'm talking to my therapist, were made during the pandemic. So there was like a huge growth of influx of clients and patients. And so now we're on the other side of that. And so people are now having to be more strategic about how they're building their practice and being more savvy when it comes to business, how they're marketing, like all of the things. So there's come to be like this, I call it two camps. So there is the private pay camp and the team insurance camp. And so regardless of which camp you're on, at the end of the day, your practice has to be profitable. So there is the top line revenue that's coming in, and then there's the bottom line, and there has to be money left over for anyone to win, right? And so you as the owner needs to make sure that your profit makes sense. So when we're talking about payment models, because that's really what it is, how are people paying you when they come into the practice? There's a couple of different things that we need to think about. So post pandemic, people are having to be more strategic. People are having to be a little bit more savvier on the business side, think more intentionally about how they're bringing in revenue. And it's fun. Like that's what I want to say. It's an opportunity for you to make an impact. It's an opportunity for you if you choose to think about like how can I make more money? How can I be more profitable? How can I make an impact? And it doesn't have to be so stressful. And so when you're thinking about this and the guilt that sometimes can come with it, because what I see, especially for folks who want to incorporate more private pay, they feel bad. Well, if I stop taking insurance, then I'm not going to be able to help the people who have insurance. The flip side of that is for the folks who are private pay, completely private pay, and they're having to be more intentional when it comes to their marketing. They're having to make sure that they're speaking to the right people who can actually pay cash. Sometimes they get to a place, especially when they're trying to get to seven figures, multi seven figures, they've gotten to a place where they are, maybe I should take a couple of insurances. So the dumb question, if you're thinking this must be a dumb question, is not a dumb question. It's actually a more complicated question because there's so many nuances that come. So it's not as easy as saying, tomorrow we're just going to be all cash pay, or today we're just going to move all to insurance. And there's so many different things that can happen inside of a business that, again, can affect that profitability. You want to think it all the way through. So let's talk first about cash pay. So if you are in the camp, I'm taking insurance and now I want to transition to cash pay. How can I do that? First of all, you need to pay attention to what's already happening with your payer mix. Your payer mix consists of how are people paying you? So if you have a certain amount of Blue Cross Blue Shield, if you have a certain amount of United Healthcare, if you have a certain amount of Medicaid, a certain amount of Medicare, then what is that? Certain amount of self-pay? Like what is that? What are those percentages? And then going a little bit deeper, who's the panel or the people that are connected to it? So for example, if you have 10% of the payer mix is Blue Cross Blue Shield, who are those folks? Where's that Blue Cross Blue Shield coming from? Sometimes you can even get it down to certain companies. You can get it down to certain associations. So for example, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. United Healthcare is affiliated with our teachers, like our retired teachers, our city workers, and that's the insurance. So if you take a lot of United Healthcare, guess what? If you're here in North Carolina, then you'll probably see a lot of teachers, a lot of firefighters, a lot of policemen or the government officials, because that's who is affiliated with United Healthcare. You can do the exact same thing in your practice. So getting very clear on where's the money coming from. So if you were saying, I want to get rid of insurance, I want to pay cash pay. The second part that you're going to look at is who is your cash pay people? Where's that money coming from? So I met with a client yesterday. We went through this. So she has a combination of Medicaid and self-pay. Very two, like if you know Medicaid and their reimbursement rates, and if you know self-pay rates, very different amounts of money that can come into your practice. So you have to bridge the gap. So the conversation was for her to actually take a look at who is paying cash, who has no problem whipping out their credit card or paying on an HSA or an FSA compared to the folks who are actually asking about their insurance. And so we went through who are those people for her to find out that data so that way she knows who to talk to, who is willing to do that. We talked about her referral partners, who are the partners that she needs to have in order to, like, who already pay maybe cash for their services. We talked to maybe some of the businesses that she could partner with. We talked about other providers that she could partner with, other businesses that she could partner with, other companies that maybe she could partner with. So partnerships and collaborations are really powerful. And then we also talked to how can she market to the folks who are actually going to come into the practice individually, right? So whether if it's through networking or if it's through strategic marketing using social media, like just going through some of the different tactics that you can use, but the point of it is knowing who are the people who are paying cash, right? And knowing where they're coming from. Maybe it's a certain zip code. So with yesterday's conversation, it was like they're all out in the suburbs. Okay, great. So you want to market more in the suburbs compared to maybe marketing, closer to the city. And so just understanding the details of things for people who and how they're paying will allow for you to be able to transition. The other thing is being very strategic. So I never recommend where you throw out the baby with the bathwater, where you just completely turn everything off. Like, no, you want to be strategic. So one of the ways is for you to look at how many panels are you taking. So if you're taking all the panels, United Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, Medicare, Medicaid, all of them, start with your lower payers first. So that way you can make room for what you want, right? So if you were trying to make room for more self-pay, make room for more self-pay. If you're trying to transition, then back it up. So maybe you're leaving Medicaid's panel, maybe you're leaving Medicare's panel, maybe you're leaving Blue Cross Blue Shield, maybe you're leaving United Healthcare, whatever that looks like for your region, because each payer is actually the reimbursement is going to be different by state. And so when you think about the payers that you want to have in the practice, pick the best ones, and then you can transition from there to eventually where you've influxed the cash pay versus to replace some of the payers that you want to maybe not participate anymore. The other thing is making sure that you are connected with really great resources who can help folks get reimbursed, for some of their services. So Reimbursify is a really good one. They work with multiple different types of specialties. For more specific specialties like Mentea, they work specifically with mental health. And so just making sure that you're paying attention to what do you want like how much money do you want to make, and then what needs to happen in the practice for you to make that money, and then making sure that you're marketing to the right people. So that was a really long way for one question. We're only through one question. So this is like for the folks like, hey, I'm taking more insurance, I want to get more private pay. The other thing that you can do too, and one of these things is when I talk about like the $1 million practice, when I talk about multi-million-dollar practices, they usually, more times than not, and even from my experience working in multi-million-dollar practices and having to grow that, we always had a specialty that was a high dollar amount, right? So there, whether if it was an assessment or a procedure or if it was a certain type of service, it was always a high dollar price point. So when you think about the services that you're providing or even like a specialty that you could bring in, I love multidisciplinary for this reason. What's a lucrative specialty, right? So what is some type of service that you could provide, whether if it's a high three-figure price point or a four-figure price point? What are those services that you can bring in that maybe insurance doesn't even reimburse for, and that the person has to pay cash for it, right? Because that way you're out of like the one-on-one type of game, and now you can put yourself in like, hey, there's a special service that we provide. So like some of my clients, they're bringing in like for future, growth, bringing in like surgery suites. Why are they bringing in surgery suites? Because of surgery. And that's a high revenue service that you can provide, right? And so you're looking at services that maybe you could even provide with your existing team. The other thing is if you already have providers, are there any unique specialties that they bring to the table, any unique skills? Sometimes I find that they will have like this whole credential like on your team, or a provider will have on your team. You don't even know about it. And it's something that you can charge like a high dollar amount, right? And so some of our clients, they do intensives, they do multi-day intensives, they do special retreats. And all of these price points are higher price points. So it's not just like the $250 one-on-one session, or if you're getting insurance, maybe the $100 one-on-one session, or if you're in a different type of specialty, maybe the $300, one-on-one session or appointment. It's more or less of, oh, now we're bringing in a $5,000 service or a $3,000 service or a $20,000 service, depending on, again, the specialty, the credential, the type of practice that you have, and how you want to grow it and how you want to scale it. So there's so many opportunities in healthcare to make money. One of the things that I say even a couple episodes back is like think outside the box, right? Don't just put yourself in a box. Think outside the box and getting very clear on how much money you want to make and what is the way that you can bring in more revenue. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing, which takes me over to the second situation. Hey, we're all cash pay and I'm tired. So, I am tired, or maybe there's not enough cash pay, or maybe you just want to take a little bit of the edge off. Or what I've found is maybe there's a particular partner that you really want to partner with, right? Maybe there's a company that you would love to be able to get in front of, and they need for you to be able to take their insurance, right? So you're almost making like an exception to a rule, and so some folks will jump on a panel for those types of special circumstances. And there's nothing wrong with this. I think what I see is like this war, especially on social media, like this war. Well, if you aren't taking cash pay, then you're doing something wrong. Or if you are taking insurance, you're doing something wrong. Again, there's nothing wrong about how you want to make your impact in the world. The only thing that's wrong is if you are sitting in a place broken, and you're resenting your practice because you're not being paid accordingly, or you want to be able to do more things in the community, or you want to be able to give your team raises and you can't do that. That's what's wrong, right? And so you have to, how you get paid inside your practice. There's so many opportunities if you really have the courage to take the leap and to do something different, and you're putting yourself in a position to be open to different ways of making money. So if you are in the place where, okay, I'm going to go ahead and take some panels, don't jump on all the panels. That's what I would recommend, because again, you don't want to flush out the self-pay or the cash pay that's coming into the practice, and you want to be strategic about it. So let's say that you are looking in your community, pick the higher payers who are going to reimburse the highest. Usually, like commonly across countries, and from what I understand, and then definitely nationally for here in the States, your top payers are usually Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and followed by maybe like a Cigna or an Aetna. Just depends again on region. So usually those are the top payers in any kind of state, and they reimburse the highest, right? And so when you're being strategic about it, don't go jumping on a Medicaid. I'd never recommend that unless if you have a plan for who's going to see that. The only time I see it is like if you're going to jump on like a Medicaid panel, is where you are specifically trying to provide a lower price point service, right? So you have an underserved population and you want to serve those folks. So you might have maybe a pre-licensed person, or maybe there is somebody who has a lower level credential than another specialty, or maybe who they're able to see it's less complicated of a case. Like those types of situations is where, but also I always recommend you limit the amount on your template. So maybe one in the morning, one in the afternoon. Same thing if you have like a sliding fee. I think about just the corporate days because, I've worked in a number of different healthcare facilities, a number of different climates. And one of the things that hospitals do is if you look at hospital systems, they don't have sliding fee in all of their practices, right? They're very strategic about what they do. They have one facility, usually one or two facilities that are specifically for lower income services, right? And so when you think about this, then if they aren't able to absorb it in all of their locations, and they have to be very strategic and intentional about it, and can only keep it in one part of their hospital system that brings in millions and millions and millions of dollars, then why in the world would you just put influxes of patients and clients into your practice for that to be everybody that you serve, right? So it's okay for you to limit the amount of people that you have, and for you to be more strategic about it as well. Another question that I get is, okay, how do I even apply? Like, what do I do? What does the credentialing process look like? And to be honest, it could be different. It's the same across payers, like the high level view of it, it's the same steps, but depending on your state. So just some background here. So I used to work for a global payer. And so I'm very familiar with the provider side and the payer side, and I've seen both things. And so when you're talking about payers, your payer is like specific. So each state has their own specific CEO, has their own specific team, has their own specific regulations, has their own specific ways that they partner with the state, like all of it. And so a lot of times what I see is colleagues will share like from one state to another state to another state, contracts and all these things and reimbursement and rates and all these things. And sometimes it doesn't cross translate. So you have to know what you're working with. It's not bad for you to get the information, but also recognize that there might be something different about your state because your state is going to be different and your CEO and that leadership over that payer is going to be different than maybe Illinois versus like Virginia or something like that. So, what you want to do first is go to the payer website. The payer website is a plethora of information. I always recommend for you, if you are taking insurance, get to know your payers, get to go onto the payer website. Usually on the website, they leave you tidbits of information, right? So, for example, they will tell you on the website, it'll be like little headers or little blog posts, or they might not necessarily communicate it, but they're essentially communicating it on their website. So go to their website and see how do they like for providers to be credentialed. Usually it's two ways. There's always a provider relations department that you can call, and then there's usually a credentialing department or a contracting department that you can reach out to. More times than not. The only times that maybe I'd see where that isn't the case if it's more of like a smaller payer and they don't necessarily have the resources to have two different departments, but more times than not, there's two different types of departments. If you're unsure, always go to the provider relations, always start there. You can call their 1-800 number, or sometimes you can send an email, or even fast forward to what people do today. There's more portals that are available. And so you would reach out and say, what is the process for me to be credentialed? Once you find out the process to be credentialed, then you're sending them their information. Usually they need to know what is the setup of your practice. And so this would go back to the structure. So how many providers you have? How many do you have? What kind of existing contracts that you have? So if this is your first existing contract, then there's two types that you could have. You could have a group contract with them. And so usually depending again on the state, you might have to have a number of providers before they'll even consider you as a group, or you can have an individual contract, which usually goes under the owner. And then you tag like any other providers through their MPI. And this is how you get reimbursed compared to when you're on a group contract. You just go ahead and like all your providers go under one group and then you get reimbursed accordingly. But the process is usually tedious. It can take anywhere between 30 days, just depending, all the way up to 6 months. I've seen anywhere up to 8 months sometimes. And so it just depends on the payer, which is sometimes can be frustrating. But you always start with provider relations, find out if they have a credentialing department. If they have a credentialing or a contracting department, you're working with a contracting department and then giving them any information that they need. So usually they need your tax ID number. They need to know if you are a LLC, PLC, or an S corp. And then they're going through the consideration on whether or not they should give you a group contract if you have multiple providers, or are they giving you more of a single contract and then you are just essentially giving them if you have multiple providers inside of your practice, but maybe you haven't reached the number. So for example, I know one, in some states, Blue Cross Blue Shield requires you to have 6 providers before they'll even consider you for a group contract. And so if you have 3 providers, then they would need those 3 providers' MPI numbers, and they would be credentialed under your practice for Blue Cross Blue Shield. But the reimbursement could be, it could be wonky. Compared to a group contract, it's usually all one reimbursement, and then all of those folks are up underneath the contract. The other thing that I always get asked is, should I hire someone to help you with credentialing? I think if you're struggling and you are intimidated by it, it doesn't hurt to get someone to help you with credentialing. The biggest thing about credentialing is once you submit all of the paperwork, keeping up on if they need anything additional. Sometimes they will. They might need for you to get another form signed. They might need to see a copy of the provider's license. They might find something on the provider's license and they need some additional documentation for that. So there's all kinds of things that can happen in that process that can take up time. Sometimes you just need to make sure that you're asking what the status of things are. And that can take a while too. So, if your DEAs aren't all up to date, for the folks who are maybe hiring other providers who can prescribe medication. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen. So be prepared for that. So if it's too intimidating, work with a credentialing specialist. A lot of times there's companies who can actually provide this service for you. They usually charge you per contract. So if you want Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Cigna, then they would charge you accordingly for Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Cigna. Sometimes they are like, oh, we'll do 3. And then the 4th one might be a rate. So just keeping track of that. If you have a biller, one of the things I would say, if you have a biller that's already in your practice and if they can help you with credentialing, that's the route that I would go or train them up. There's some really great associations. One of them is the AAPC, which is the American Association of Professional Coders. That sounds good. That sounds right. But anyways, like the AAPC, we'll put that in the show notes, for you. They are just amazing resource for you where you can get some additional information, not only from the coding aspect, but the billing aspect, but also some credentialing, what to do, what not to do, what to do as well. So those are usually the biggest things that always come up is, how do I get credentialed? Who do I need to talk to? Should I hire somebody? At the end of the day, the payer should be able to walk you through what their process is, and it's just more or less taking the time. But if you're busy, you don't have time, then that's when I'm always going to say resource it out. Hire somebody, make sure that you're hiring the right person, go through, talk to the references, because I have seen credentialing go wrong and go bad. And it's because either they didn't submit the paperwork, they didn't know what to submit, there was too much of a delay, they've gotten an email, they missed the email. And so sometimes things don't go the way that they need to as well. So I don't want to paint a picture like once you hire a credential, everything will be sunshine, roses, and unicorns. But yeah, I would say that that's that's another question that I get is credentialing too. So another question that I get is, should I get into affiliate marketing to make money? So you're in a situation where, thinking outside the box. Brandy, you told me to think outside the box. And so I am going to think outside the box and I'm going to go be an affiliate for some company. And that's going to pay me, whether if it's $30 or $1,000. And that's more money. That's $1,000 more than what I have today. And sometimes not all affiliate marketing or affiliate partnerships are good affiliate partnerships when it comes to your practice. So truth be told, I'm school of thought of you focus on your business, right? You focus on your focus. And when you are building a practice, then you focus on building your practice. And you focus on who you're serving in your practice. And so when you show up and you're marketing and you're speaking to a specific population, you speak to that specific population. So if you have people coming into your practice for women's health, or if you have people coming into your practice for mental health, or if you have people coming into your practice for wellness things, whatever that is, then you focus on those pain points, those problems, and talking to how you are the solution to those pain points and to those problems, right? And so that's effective marketing. What I see, affiliate marketing go bad is where sometimes behind the scenes, you'll have partners of the actual business owner, the private practice owner, who gets like, hey, if you talk to people about our service, we'll give you $30 for every person that you refer, or even $1,000 for every person that you refer. It's enticing. I'll see them all of a sudden to show up on social media talking about their accountant or talking about some random tool. And I'm like, who are you talking to? And then on the flip side of it, their schedules are not full and they're wondering why. And so when you are doing affiliate marketing and you want to talk to your colleagues, because that's really what it is. If you're talking about your accountant or you show up, talk about Canva, then you're talking to a completely different person outside of the person who wants to come into your practice, right? So somebody who wants to come into your practice for women health issues doesn't want to know about Canva, and they do not want to know about your accountant. They have no concern. They have no desire to know. And so when you do these things, it confuses your audience. You're not going to make a lot of money because the bulk of who maybe is following you, even if you have some colleagues who are following you, the juice is not worth the squeeze. So if you are really in a situation where you're like, I need to make money, Brandy, I really do, then talk to your colleagues behind the scenes or talk to your colleagues in other ways. But do not waste your marketing time and energy to create a whole reel or to create a whole presentation about your accountant. Like, stop doing it. And so that's affiliate marketing that I see wrong. If you want to make a bigger impact and you want to make more money with affiliate marketing, then partner with somebody who is going to pay you money for the people who you serve, right? So there is a client that we have, an amazing client. She's a lactation consultant. And if she's listening to this, she knows I'm talking about her. She makes 4 or 5 figures every month on her affiliate marketing. And the reason why is because she only talks about tools that impact or resources or partners where she gets paid for affiliate marketing that have to do with her patient. That's it. That's all that she talks to. So if she's talking about anything or if she's doing a review or she's giving any kind of kudos or anything, then it only has to do with something that is going to impact her patient. That's it. And so it has been able to grow to a whole revenue stream for her where she is now in a place of her and her team having to keep up with how many affiliate partners that she has and whether or not her money is coming in the door because people actually buy it, right? And so when you're thinking about affiliate marketing, the best way for you to make money from it or for you to develop it into a revenue stream is if you're being strategic about it and you're actually making the impact with the people who are coming inside of your practice. So I think about my dentist. What they started to do is they have a whole Amazon storefront. If I buy something off of their Amazon store, they'll get affiliate dollars for that. But everything has to do with dentistry. There's Oral-B toothbrushes on there. There's mouthwash on there. Like there's things that are going to help me. And then in their email newsletter, they have a link that goes to their Amazon storefront page. So they're making money through that newsletter and then also helping their patients in a deeper way. They're not sending me an email newsletter talking about their accountant, or their Canva tool or their email marketing system. No, they are talking to me as the patient and trying to help me make a deeper impact or making a deeper impact with me and how they're caring for me. And so your practice is no different. So if you want to do affiliate marketing, I'm all for it. Have multiple revenue streams. Absolutely. But be smart about it, be intentional about it, and you'll make way more money if you are thinking about what does my patient need? What's going to be helpful to my patient? How is this tool going to solve a problem for my patient? And then you market that. And then on the other side of that, then you ask for the dollars. If you can get enough people to buy it, then you could always even reach out and say, hey, we've sold 50 of this thing for you. Are you open to do an affiliate partnership with us? Or if there's already like a code that you already have, again, you'll be able to make more money. So that's that question. Again, none of these are dumb questions. None of them are dumb questions. They're very good questions. I love them, but I know that sometimes people have behind the scenes questions about it or think that this is a dumb question, so I'm not going to ask. And it things that I see just even out in the market, and I'm just like, oh, that pains my heart. That hurts my heart. I want you to do well. I think for today, that's a really good episode. That's a lot of, I think, good information that you can use. So much more. I'm looking at this list of questions, and there's so many more questions that I want to make sure that I answer that we're going to do a part 2. So come back next week for part 2 of some of the dumb questions that really aren't dumb, air quotes, for you to find out maybe about hiring. When to pick contractors versus salaried or W-2 employees or hourly employees. When to trust your gut versus the data. So that's a really good question, and that's going to be fun to answer because anybody who's listening who works with me knows that I'm all about data. So I will see you guys next week. Bye. Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.